right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tiny Bookstore Live. This is Leah from the Tiny Bookstore, wishing you a happy Saturday afternoon. And today I'm just going to jump right into it. One of the things that I've been paying attention to in the news this week has been a lot of the analysis on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the case because I know I'd prefer to not be spending my Saturday afternoon talking about like the boring aspects of case law. But I did notice that there have been some very interesting things that people have been saying about the Supreme Court and how it's political and how the U.S. Supreme Court might die and how like what we're seeing a lot today, especially with what may end up happening with Roe versus Wade, is just a sign of how the US Supreme Court is nothing but another political actor. And when I saw that, I found that just kind of, it's a little sensationalistic for people to say that. I think that part of it comes from a misunderstanding of what the role of the court is and how judges tend to act. And I also think that a lot of it is just, us not really understanding the role of the courts. A couple of weeks ago, the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei had an interview with PBS, and one of the things that people were talking a lot about on it was how he was attacking, woke culture. But what a lot of people overlooked was the fact that he made the point that with technology today, we know far more than we understand. And when he said that, I'm just like, you know what, it's brilliant because it really does explain what's going on today when we're seeing the failure for people to, agree about science, coming to basically like a basic understanding of a lot of things. Although we feel like we know a lot, I don't really think that we really are as aware of things as we like to think that we are. Some people like to call it the Dunning-Kruger effect, where if you have a little bit of knowledge, you assume that you're just kind of an expert on everything. And the problem with that is that with access to the internet, it's a wonderful thing. We've got so much information at our fingertips and in our pockets that back in the day you had to go on down to the library and grab an encyclopedia. For the younger people among us, an encyclopedia was the internet, but in a lot of heavy books. But with all of this information at our fingertips, we're not necessarily doing the work to really understand it fully and really rely upon reliable sources. So getting back to this entire idea of, is the Supreme Court something that is a political actor? I would say no. A lot of that comes with the fact that, I do have experience in the legal field. I went through law school. I've been practicing law for, oh, I'm not even going to mention how many years on stream because I'm feeling sensitive about my age at the moment. But I've been in it for a long time. And I think that with that knowledge and seeing the coverage, I think that I have a little bit more insight. And I also read this little beauty by Associate Justice Stephen Breyer, The Authority of the Court and the Peril of Politics. And I know that I mentioned this book back when it first came out. I advocated for people to listen to it in audiobook format because it really does give us a good idea of the history of the US Supreme Court and how it got its authority, and it really gives a good understanding of what the court actually does. We've all heard of the Supreme Court. Well, at least I hope we've all heard of the Supreme Court. I remember, Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel pulling people on the street. Possible that people aren't aware of it, but still, even though we know it exists, we don't have a really good understanding of what their job actually is and how they do it. So a lot of the times we'll see that, the Supreme Court is quote unquote ducking a particular constitutional issue. One of the reasons why they do that is because if they can find a way to do it, that's what they're supposed to do. It's one of the ideas of judicial reasoning is that if you can find a way to avoid saying what the Constitution actually means, they should do that because that's something that's very significant. And if you can find another reason to rule on an issue, you're going to go with that. So, along with people not necessarily understanding that aspect of it, a lot of people don't understand how judges come to the conclusion that they do, especially if you're an appeals court. And the Supreme Court they're basically, for all intents and purposes, especially here, they're an appeals court. That means they review something else that's going on. It's not their job to come up with law, it's their job to look at it and figure out what it means. And with the approach that they take, Instead of just, taking each case and finding a different way to come to an answer, what they actually tend to do is come up with, philosophy and legal theory. They do a lot of study in history, and they'll come to what they think is the best interpretation and the best idea. So, one thing that we all know is that everyone is different. That's common knowledge, I think. And the life experiences that we have and the way that we are educated, that's going to have an effect on the approach that we take to the law. So, what a lot of people interpret as being the judges acting in a political way, what we're actually seeing is a reflection of their life experience, their education, and their jurisprudential philosophy. And that's a little bit of a mouthful, especially on a Saturday afternoon. But I think that it's a really great way of getting to understand that when we see a judge act, they're not necessarily doing it because of their ideology. They're doing it because they're following the steps that their particular judicial philosophy leads them to follow. And that takes me to another aspect of the negativity that I'm seeing is that a lot of times we're assuming the best, not the best, the worst out of people in general and Supreme Court justices in particular. Some people are saying that, well, you've got Trump judges and you've got Obama judges and Bush 1 judges, and they have some type of loyalty to the president who appointed them to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that that's an interesting take. I'm not going to get negative about it, but I will point out the fact that when someone is appointed to the Supreme Court, they're there for life. And when you take an oath as a judge or as an attorney, that's something that you're going to take seriously. So I think one of the things is that's helpful in trying to understand not just where the justices are coming from, but also people that we're talking to in everyday discourse is don't necessarily assume the worst about what they're saying and what they're thinking. When in doubt, give them the benefit of doubt, because a lot of times we might not agree with what someone is saying. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil or that they are quote unquote political. And I think that again, it's helpful in order to get to a place of understanding and to just kind of bring down the temperature and bring less acrimony to the basic. Our discourse in general is to quit assuming that people are doing something because they're being political. Now, as far as this entire idea of, something that's political versus, just kind of going along with your judicial philosophy, one of the important things is trying to get a feel of what do we mean when we're saying political. And going back to the authority of the court, what Associate Justice Breyer said is, when I hear the word political, I think of my work on the staff of the Senate Judiciary Committee. We staffers would sometimes play a kind of game, imagining that Senator Edward Kennedy, the committee chair, simultaneously received 2 calls, one from the Secretary of the Interior, another from the mayor of Worcester, Massachusetts. Which would answer first? Which would he answer first? Most of us would bet on the mayor. Why? Because many of the senator's constituents lived in Worcester. That, in a sense, is politics. Who elected you? Are you a Democrat or a Republican? Which position is more popular? Where are the votes? Politics in this elemental sense is not present at the court. So, looking at this particular definition of what is political, it's you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It's that quid pro quo, give and take, just passing favors. And on a basic level, I think that, as far as politicians are concerned, okay, yeah, knock yourself, go ahead, assume they're acting in a political way. But as far as U.S. Supreme Court justices, they're dealing with very complicated issues. And looking at the issue of abortion in particular, we really have to remember that that is a very tough topic. It has been confounding and really vexing some of the greatest legal minds for literally hundreds of years. But you don't have to take my word for it. Oh my goodness. Hey, shout out to LeVar Burton, right? But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Pull Roe versus Wade. That really does give an excellent historical treatment of the history of abortion and what laws did with it. And when you see that, you kind of start to think like, okay, if all of these great legal minds have spent hundreds of years trying to come to an answer and they haven't, we really shouldn't expect much better. And so that's why I think that the main takeaway here is to get to that place of understanding instead of just knowing, yes, we know that the different justices are going to come down in a different way. But in order to understand it, you have to put in that work. You can't just assume that, like, oh, it's just political. That's a cop out. That's easy. If you really want to understand why they're doing this, do the reading, do the history. If you haven't read Roe versus Wade, if you haven't read, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, then I'm sorry, sit down and don't assume that something is political because it's just simply that you don't necessarily have enough to make that particular call. It's if you don't understand Justice Clarence Thomas and his attitudes towards substantive due process, then you can't really sit here and say that something is political. And I know that I might have talked over some of your heads, but I think that's kind of the point. In order to really understand, instead of just know why Justice Clarence Thomas is against the determination of a constitutional right of abortion, you have to understand his attitudes towards substantive due process, which, in short, his attitude is that it's fake. It doesn't exist. So when you see that, yes, personally, it appears that his belief is that, life begins at conception. But as far as his jurisprudential philosophy, his judicial philosophy, it's that the basis for that constitutional right he thinks doesn't exist. And, there are broader implications for that, because there are other important rights that we see that flow out of this entire idea of substantive due process. So again, to get from that place of knowing to understanding, you need to do that research. And again, I encourage all of you to do your independent research so that way we can understand it. Now, to pivot here and, lighten things up a little bit, get back into that holiday mood, that holiday vibe, we're going to have a little bit of a talk about having more of a stress-free holiday season. And for that, I am bringing in my guest. You all know her as Dr. Cindy Graham. I know her as my sister. And here she is, Cindy. How are you?
All right.
Great. Thank you for joining me on this afternoon to, just kind of have a talk. So ordinarily when Cindy comes on stream, I'm picking her brain for free about things that involve psychology because that's her bread and butter. That's what she does. That's what she's an expert at. But today she's just here as, a mom, a sister, and an auntie, just talking about what we're going to do to approach, or at least try to approach the holidays in more of a stress-free way. So, Cindy, talking about like what you do ordinarily for the holidays, what do you usually do? What does that usually look like?
Right. So for me, admittedly, I'm trying to approach my holidays this year a little bit differently than I have in previous years. But like as a psychologist, the holidays are kind of tend to be a difficult time for people. So we tend to see an increase in symptoms of like anxiety or depression for various reasons. And so for me, things tend to ramp up a good bit between, like right after Halloween straight through until pretty much MLK, when things start to smooth out a little bit. So
Right.
usually I'm a little bit busier for work, but then at the same time, like home life wise, it's definitely a lot of holiday traditions and just holiday fun. So the boys are super excited. We're going to be decorating our tree today. And, I really try to maintain, certain traditions year after year. So for Thanksgiving, we watched the parade. While I was cooking, the boys were watching the parade, and then we watched the dog show afterwards. And, we always have eggnog, and, we just kind of have our usual routines that we do for the holidays to kind of make it special. They do their Christmas wish lists. We were dancing and laughing to Christmas music last night while we were doing some arts and crafts. So that's really what we tend to do, when we're not in school mode or in work mode or things like that.
So very cool. So are you or Jason out there like Griswolding it, going all out with those decorations?
We do not. And Jason, so he's not going to go all out with us.
At respect, I love him deeply, and I am here with him on that.
Yeah, usually it's like I've started perfecting the art of ordering things and getting them to the house as opposed to him going out and obtaining them. And then, granted, with the pandemic, that's also put a different spin on things. We're still we're not necessarily out there as much as we were pre-pandemic. So
Right.
again, it is a lot of having things like delivered to the house, but like the decorating, that is that's definitely mostly me and the boys. And then for the tree, it's kind of the thing where we kind of pull Jason literally out of the basement like from his computer to come decorate the tree with us and things like that. And then but there are certainly, let me not act like he doesn't take part in holiday activities. He does. So there are different things, like we do our holiday movies, and during the daytime, I mean, we were just spending a whole lot of time together, all four of us just now, for an hour or so, before we all went to our separate corners, which is also important for stress relief. Let me just put that on there
Yes,
right
yes.
now. Like the
But
traditions together are important, but time apart is important too.
hallelujah. But no, like seriously, like I'm thinking, let's just listening to how you handle the holidays.
Mhm.
It sounds pretty healthy and like relatively like not quite as stressful, because I know like back when the kids were younger,
Mhm.
I wanted to try, because I remember like Christmas when we were kids, it was like magical. Like mom and dad really went out and like Lewis getting out there, like putting the lights on the house, like
Right on
us
the house.
doing the
Mhm.
trees, they had the
Mhm.
food. It was
Mhm.
just, it was such an event. So when I was younger, like, well, okay, younger as a parent, because I've
Right.
been in the game for like, 14-ish years now. So like
Mhm.
at the beginning, it's just like, okay, time to make that magic happen. Yeah. So
Right.
I wouldn't go quite Griswold as far as the decorations, but the meltdown,
Right.
that
Right.
was me, because it's like, okay, like I want the kids to have that same magic that we had, because I love this time of year. Like, yes, I am that person who countdown to Christmas, Hallmark Channel. I am there with it, like mom and I texting, like, ooh, which movie's coming up next
Yeah.
before Halloween? So absolutely love it. I look forward to it the whole year, like same as
Mhm.
when I was a kid. But
Mhm.
I found that as an adult, I was not as happy. It wasn't like, it was not magical,
Right.
trying to figure out how to
Mhm.
get the tree up, filling in the gap spaces, trying to get the cookies together, working the schedules, getting the treats into school,
Mhm.
trying to do all of those happy holiday events, going out and doing this, baking that. Like,
Mhm.
I got to a point where I was just exhausted. And I
Mhm.
noticed that I was not present in our family holidays.
Mhm. Mhm.
I would set everything up, but then I would run back to go, like, do the next thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
You
just
know,
kind of, I,
oh,
one thing that I've noticed is, a lot of other people are falling into that, where this is a season of joy and togetherness, but a lot of times the adults, they don't necessarily get to enjoy it because they're
mhm.
trying so hard to do the magic.
Right.
So I think that one thing that it took me a few years to learn is, okay, look, I'm not going to sit here and just watch this magic, because I don't necessarily want them to have that memory of, oh, wow, like this was an amazing Christmas, but I don't remember Leah being around that much
Mhm.
for it.
Mhm. Right. Right. Right.
And I think that that's one thing that I encourage for other people to do is, just kind of figure out ways to just kind of involve other members of the family. And what I like that you mentioned that you do is that, you have the kids participate in
Right.
the tree decorating. So
Yeah.
as far as like, cookies, and I know that this is one of the areas of contention, because I was texting with one of my friends and they're just like, they want to have the perfect cookie. So the kids are not involved in that situation because they want them to be pretty. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can do both. Like, it's not one or the other. So you can have the presentable cookies that you're mailing out to everybody, and
Right.
that can be picture perfect and that you're doing all by yourself or what have you. And then you can have the ones that the kids are doing that aren't quite so perfect. But I think also what people need to realize is that there is beauty in the imperfection of what kids do. Like, if you look at kids' artwork, it's not like it's, well, I guess I could say I'm not trying to offend people who are into Picasso, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yes.
like there's a place for that, right? Right. I mean, so even as seemingly unstructured or chaotic at that a work of art from a child may look like, there's still beauty in it. There's a reason why we hang these things up, at our desks, and whatnot, even though it may look like scribbles, it's because our kids did it and it's
Yes.
beautiful to us. And so, sure, you can have those picture perfect cookies if you want, but, down the road, do you want that narrative of your kids saying, like, yeah, what I remember of the Christmas cookies was that I wasn't allowed to make them because they weren't good enough
Right.
to send out to
Exactly.
others. So, and maybe, not to say all kids will take it that hard, but it is sending that message of like, okay, I need this to look a particular way from start to finish, every last one of it, as opposed to, um, the value in the kids participating in it. And again, it's about what you like, what you want from it. If that's what you want, like if you want the look to be like magazine ready, for sure, do that. But, if you know that that's something that your kids are going to be sad about or wish that they can take part in, you have to keep that in mind, and you can strike that balance. You can have two different sets of cookies if you want to go through that extra
Yes.
stuff. And
And
then if
or
you don't, if you're like, hey, no, where you don't get to take part in this, then let them know when they will.
yes.
you
And
know,
there are so many different types of cookies, like chocolate
right.
chip cookies. Any kid can grab a scoop and
Right.
get that done.
Right, right.
Yes.
So it's I think in that way it can be easy to kind of fall into our patterns of rigidity. And I do it myself. Like I'm not gonna lie and act like, I'm not particular about certain things, certainly when it comes to decorating the tree. I'm like, how about putting more of such and such color around on this side?
Yes.
Part of the trick sometimes is making them think it was their idea when it was actually like
See, and I think that that's accepting the kids for how they are, but also, guiding them to
right.
the various options. And I know, like, one of the tricks that I kind of use, because one of the things that I came across is, doing sugar cookies from scratch. I
Mhm.
do not have the time to do that. And I also can't say that I, like, what's the technical term, care that much.
Mhm.
So what I found is that, those Pillsbury sugar cookies, the
Mhm.
kids love the decorating part more than anything. So, like, if there is a commercial shortcut, you
Mhm.
know, weigh how much
Right.
things actually matter to you. It's like with our Christmas tree. We
Right.
have 0 glass ornaments that go
Right.
onto that tree.
Right.
And at some point, when the kids are in college, we might bring them back.
Mhm. Right. Right. Yep.
But, like, and that it enables them to just kind of do that. So I think that, yeah, like giving kids things that they can actually, participate in without, you know,
Right.
damaging anything, but
Mhm.
also, having more grace about how things look. I think that's an important thing too. So,
Right.
yeah, I think that involving the family was really a major step. But another thing, the pressure of the shopping.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, fortunately, I got wise years ago that, like, okay, this entire thing of, getting up at 3 in the morning to try to buy something online,
Right.
just kind of over it. Because at the end of the day, like, I think the holidays are about, getting things because that they're getting kids things that they're going to enjoy, not necessarily like that perfect present. So how do you deal with, managing the expectations and the potential disappointment on Christmas morning if the kid doesn't get exactly what they want? Because this year we know with the supply chain disruptions, Santa
Right.
Claus might not be able to come through, like elf
Mhm.
strike and whatnot.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and I mean, I think so. For me, my approach with the boys has always been like my approach and Jason's approach has always been to we don't put so much emphasis on the toys because for us, we are Christian, and so for us, celebrating Christmas really is about more than just exchanging gifts. It's about the holiday for what it is as a Christian, and then just also the idea of like doing good by others, and that's for us isn't necessarily consistent with like again, more power to you if you are able to shower your kids with gifts. And I'm really not passing judgment on that. But for us, that was something, and because we couldn't like early on, we were still in the earlier phases of our careers, and and certainly more so for Jason. So for us, we never put that much emphasis on toys, and we have to speak a little bit more softly because the boys might be able to hear me. But like even with
Oh,
the things that the boys put on their wish list that were specifically, hey, Santa, could you bring me this versus not, Santa tended to not bring the most expensive item
Right.
to the and again, the dollar amount of the toys, we just opted that, like, this is not for us how we're placing emphasis on our Christmas. Now, you might be thinking, okay, like, this is not helpful if we are a family that like shower our kids with gifts, but it's not necessarily too late to start teaching the idea of, hey, like, Christmas can be more than just what kind of gifts that you're getting. It can be like, hey, people put in thought and effort to get you what you have, and that's really, in a lot of ways where the value can be put on the presents. Because if you are setting it up for, like, hey, you get these really great amazing toys and they don't get it, they are going to be disappointed. And certainly on the back end, you can teach them, gratitude and
Hmm.
grace and understanding, which is really, really important. But there's also messaging that you can give them, not just messaging, but just rearing that you can provide beforehand to help them to understand that.
Right. And
um
you know what? There was an article that I was reading earlier this week where a woman said that she was teaching her kids to believe that, well, not to believe, she taught her kids the very important life principle
mhm,
that the thought is the gift.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
And when I
mhm.
read that, I'm just like, all sorts of meme faces. Like,
Right.
it's like, yeah, like that is an amazing way of putting it because
Right.
we really, like, you've
There
heard the stories, as far as
right.
the reactions,
Yeah,
they've run the gamut.
right, and not to say that, like, you can do everything right and do your best to teach kids to not, be as into exactly the thing that they're getting for Christmas and be more about the gratitude and the thought, but, disposition and demeanor and, just how kids are by nature, some kids will really care, and, in that way, you can validate their, feelings and their disappointment, but then help them to understand, like, this is the best that we could do, we had you in mind. That sometimes things don't go according to plan, but that doesn't mean it can't still be awesome. And I tend to try to, like, redirect to, like, the positive aspects of things,
Hmm.
and point out, like, whether it's the in the toy that they did get, what might be like a very awesome thing about it that might be similar to the thing that they wanted. Or, again, some people may say you may be putting unnecessary guilt on the child, or bringing your emotions into it too much. But I think teaching kids to understand, hey, you are hurting my feelings.
Right.
I mean, like, I wanted to do this for you and I did my best. And it's important for people to understand, like, ingratitude hurts people's feelings.
Yes.
And so I'm not in the camp that says, that you should be protecting your kids from all of the negative emotions that you ever experience in life. Like, we are one of their primary examples of emotion and how to handle your emotions, how to display your emotions. So if we're teaching them, like, hey, you can't ever, like, hurt your parents' feelings, that's a false narrative. That's
Yes.
a very
And a
false narrative.
damaging one.
Right, right. Like, you can hurt anybody's feelings, and that's important to keep in mind. I'll still love you, but you can hurt my feelings, and that's
Yes.
important. Like,
So it's using everyday stuff in the holidays to train them into being like people. Like
Mhm.
I was on, of course, me, like streaming through like Twitter, Instagram. I saw a very interesting, um, I guess this is just a what I don't even know what I'd call this, but like, yeah, like it's not quite a meme, but it's just like an infographic. Boom, there it is,
Mhm.
infographic. It said, the 8 executive functions that you want to teach kids, self control, emotional control, task initiation, working memory, self monitor, flexibility, organization, planning, and time management. And I think that self control, emotional control, and self monitoring that helps
Mhm.
develop that emotional intelligence.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that holidays and special events, birthdays, they really do, they're the test that'll
Right.
tell you. It's like, okay, how's your EQ doing today? Having a tantrum because you don't have the game for the PS5? Ooh, not that great,
And
but we'll work on it.
it's also about flexibility. And, sometimes you're going to have to wait in line in store for something. Sometimes a cash register might go down. Sometimes, they might not have something in stock. Sometimes, A colleague that you're supposed to be working on something is going to show up late, or there are so many different things that might happen. Your laptop might break down in the middle of a live stream. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully we're not jinxing this
Yep.
right now. But things can happen, and resiliency is important.
Yes, a virus can hit the world and
Right.
leave us at home for 2 years.
Right. And sure, you can teach them to plan ahead, but you can only do so much planning. And pandemic teaches you that there's a lot that's beyond our control, and you just have to roll with it. Not to say that you have to like it. I don't like it.
Yes.
I would never have planned to be a psychologist in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody has that as a career goal.
Well, I would hope.
Right. So flexibility and resiliency is important, and these moments around the holidays, again, build up make the holidays special. I believe in I love the holidays. It is absolutely my most favorite time of the year, but you have to be mindful of how you are raising your children to react to these types of things. One day they may have a loved one in their life, a spouse, a partner, someone that they care about, who is doing the best that they can to give them gifts or expressions of love. And, what are the things that your child, then adult or what have you, has learned about gift giving and the purpose and meaning behind gift giving? Is it just about the item, or is it about the effort? Again, not to say that somebody needs to get socks every Christmas and be 100% okay with it, but
Well, it depends on the socks.
Right, I know I'm rocking socks right now. I'd show you, but
hard pass, Aaron Rodgers. Hard pass.
So appreciation is something that's important, and that's something that you want to teach your kids when they're young, and the holidays is the perfect time.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
And I think that really does create not just the magic, but also well-rounded and well-developed human beings by managing those expectations.
Because also too, they're going to be adults one day too, and they're going to there's a lot of stress that people put on themselves during the holidays, and I admittedly would put a lot of stress. The amount of cookies and the variety that I make pre-kids versus now post-kids, very different.
I noticed.
Right, very different.
They're still tasty, but I've noticed.
But it's very different. So if we are setting up if also what we're modeling for our kids, and if we're modeling for them, hey, you need to be spending all day every day in the kitchen or decorating your house or doing all these different things, that can be okay. But think about how much stress you feel sometimes in trying to pull it all together, or if people don't appreciate it, is that also what you want your kids to learn? Or do you want them to learn hey, make it more cooperative? Or it's going to be tough when the kids are younger, and then when they're older and they're helping out more, it takes on a different dynamic. I think basically the way in which we put stress on ourselves can be a direct reflection and a direct example for our kids. They are a direct example for our kids, and how they might be when they get older, and how they see the holidays. So, everything in moderation is true still during the holidays.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we have to give a shout out to Mom, because she was truly a swan, on the surface, graceful and calm, but underneath, she was kicking like crazy to make, those magical holidays happen. And I think that, it's I'm not gonna lie, I have no regrets about that. And I know once we got old enough, she did model us taking on part of that load to just, get the tree up. And when we were little, she did have us decorate, with her. So, like I said, shout out, Mom. We love you. You did a great job.
Right. I mean, I tell people all the time, I've been making a Thanksgiving turkey since high school. I started, and I started off making 20+ pound turkeys. Making a turkey for Thanksgiving is not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
And you did a good job.
Yeah.
Trend here about me and your cooking, Cindy.
Right.
Hint, hint.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's really not, I think sometimes as parents, we can feel the kids like shouldn't have to be involved in things. Like, as long as kids are capable of doing it, you see all those cooking shows out there where kids are competing and they're out there cutting up foods and whatever and whatnot. Like, it's a limitation that we tend to have. It tends to be more of like a cultural limitation than an actual like developmental limitation. I'm not saying give your child the sharpest knife in the kitchen and expect them to like chop up some carrots and onions and celery. I'm not saying that for sure, but let them help out with some cookies. They can decorate a tree.
Like yes, they can.
So, and
Absolutely.
it gets them involved. It reduces stress for you. It helps to make them happy and they feel like they're involved and they're, building their own concept of like what they do. And and you know what? Actually, sorry. Another thing is keep in mind, like not forcing things on kids too, or even your family members. Sometimes they might not, especially for like teens, they might not, they might be in their phase where they're defining themselves separately from the family. And so, maybe they might not be as into the like full on holiday situation that we may want to create. And you can respect that. I think, again, letting them know that, okay, like sitting down for dinner with us is super important and it's something that we value and we really want you present for that. So you can't escape that.
Right.
But it might mean like, okay, do they have to string up the popcorn? Do people still do that? Like string up popcorn to put on the tree? And I don't even know if people do that anymore, but
I don't know if they do that anymore.
Right. I might be telling my age. I'm the older sister, by the way, of the two of them.
Oh, they could tell.
Oh, thanks. Although I do remember people calling us twins a lot, so
they were blind.
I'm just saying. So yeah, sometimes keeping in mind it might be too much and more than what people may want to participate in, and so allowing your kids to like bow out of some activities is an important thing, because again, as adults, what's one of the things that adults can sometimes have a hard time with? Establishing boundaries and saying no and being overcommitted to things. And here I am doing this thing that I don't really want to do. Again, it's a compromise. I'm not saying that they should be sitting out of the going to visit family or things like that, but find that balance for them. If you know that going to visit family is going to be important, then say, okay, look, this is really important for us as a family. Where can we compromise? What's something that, something else that we can say, okay, you can stay at home for. And again, I'm talking teens that are of legal age to be able to be at home alone or bow out of things. I'm not talking about the leave your little toddler at home because they had a tantrum because they didn't want to wear the outfit you wanted them to wear. Okay. Let's be clear on that. So, yeah.
But no, I think that's definitely a good observation. And I also think that one of the important things is just kind of, and I hate the word mindful because it's become jargon, but I like what it's intended to mean, which is, think things through, people. That's what mindfulness actually means. So, like Cindy said, don't leave your toddlers at home. Don't be that 14-year-old who doesn't really, grasp, but you don't open the door to strangers home alone.
Right.
Gotta kind of play it by ear.
Right.
But again, using logic and understanding the capacity of the people around you, but also identifying the areas where they can grow. Because a kid will never learn how to, bake a sugar cookie unless you, bite the bullet and get in there and teach them how to make that sugar cookie. That's a note to future me. Not this year me, but future me, doing those cookies from scratch or getting Bill to do it.
Yeah, right.
And that's another thing. One of the things that I know I did for many, many years was I was making the magic happen separately. Like, Bill would do his thing, but I wouldn't really ask him to do that much because a lot of the holiday stuff, it doesn't necessarily come naturally to him, or it wasn't something that, he was raised to really, how can I put this delicately and kindly?
Take part.
Yes. I think that, and I think that's the case with a lot of people. They're used to one parent just kind of doing the whole thing. And what I found was that, like if I asked him, hey, Bill, can you like put the tree up with the kids? And he's just like, oh yeah, cool. Got it. Done. It's like, oh, I'm like, oh, really? I'm like, okay, gingerbread houses, can you get those together?
Right.
And it's like, yeah.
And I
Got
think
it.
even with that, so that doesn't fly with Jason. I'm like, who's watching this?
See, that's
Um,
again like accepting what people are capable of and also
right.
encouraging them to, grow.
Right. So sometimes it can be giving people an option and saying, these are the various things that we have going on this holiday season. Which things would you like to lead up and take part in? Which one?
And that's where I think that like eat, and that's where again like knowing the situation that you're in, having the partnership and just
Right. Right.
using your team, like seeing it
Mhm.
as a team effort,
Mhm.
everyone getting together to make, the holidays happen. And I
Mhm.
think that one of the good things for me, like trying to do things less with less stress in the past,
Mhm.
is that it's become more of a routine every year that the
Mhm.
family comes together to
Mhm.
make the holiday happen instead of it, just being me. And in this, pandemic year with the supply chain disruptions and all of that that's going on, and just, the just kind of keeping all those different balls in the air, I think it's very helpful to, rely upon that team to make that stress, well, as far as it being stress free. I'm going to interrupt myself to ask you a question.
Mhm.
Is it even possible to have a stress free Christmas
Um,
or stress free holiday season?
define stress free. I mean, sure. Like there are some people that I'm like. I mean, I feel like I'm biased because I'm a psychologist, so I hear about the stressful holidays as opposed to the ones that are not stressful. But I mean, I think for some people, sure, like they get into a spot where it's comfortable, they have their routine. Maybe the kids aren't like super young or they have a lot of support. I think we are kind of like in unique situations because we are not, we are, several many many miles separated from each other. Like our families are like nuclear families that we grew up with, but a lot of families, they do live closer to family than not. And so, for a lot of people, they do just have their like routine down for the holidays. And for some people, again, stress. So for me as a psychologist, like stress is not necessarily always a bad thing either. And so for some people, like yeah, I mean, mom for me every year around the holidays, she's like, "Are you doing too much?"
Yes.
But for me, I kind of know, like, look, I'm gonna throw down in the kitchen for Thanksgiving, for Christmas Eve, for Christmas and New Year's. Then after that, leave me alone for about a month. Then I'll get back in my regular rotation of like cooking. So it's not necessarily always a bad stress because like for me, because I keep in mind like I am building tradition, and I'm building something here for my family and something that I enjoy taking part in. So even though it's a lot and I'll be tired and worn out, for me it's worth it. It's not bad stress. It's stress that's actually good and worth it. And I like kind of look forward to it. Like I plan my whole thing and I try to perfect another recipe. Um, so yeah, so absolutely, even if it's a lot, that stress can still be a positive stress. But
But okay,
um,
you said bad stress.
mhm.
Let's say this, but using your auntie words. What's
Ah,
bad stress?
bad stress. So that's where it makes you not feel good. You feel like it wasn't worth it. You wish you didn't do it. You're dreading it coming up. You might have some physical symptoms like literally headaches, can't sleep, just that feeling of dread, sadness, avoidance. Like for me, I know, even though I know I'm going to be spending hours and hours in the kitchen for several days, I'm out there like planning my menu. I'm like excited to do it ahead of time. And I'm not that way for all things.
Right. So I guess you have to let us know again using your auntie words. What's
Mhm.
good stress?
Yeah, so those are, it's what it makes you happy. Like it might be a lot and you can tell that okay, I'm going to be busy, I'm going to have a lot going on. I might not have as much time for myself, but you still feel like you have that warm, the warm fuzzy feeling inside. Like it makes you feel happy, you look forward to it. You are getting an early start on it. That would be the good stress, the things that you see as making life worth it, but it's still something that it's not like it comes super easy. And um it's stuff that you have to, like, you have to put some work into. You may be tired afterwards, but you're glad you did it.
So what you're saying is that stress is not necessarily all bad.
Mm-mm. No, literally stress is just a change. stress is change. Like it's an impact on the body and on the
So
person and on the mind.
so the word stress itself, it's neutral. It's all about the type of it that
Mhm.
really,
Mhm.
it's like pizza.
Mhm.
Pizza's just pizza. It can be good, it can be bad.
It can be bad, right?
All right. You know me, I bring it down to food.
Right, right.
All right. So, one last question.
Mhm.
As far as, and it's kind of going back to the entire thing with um, Klaus and what may happen with that as far as, supply chain disruptions.
Mhm.
Kids not necessarily getting exactly what they want if it's on the list that they sent to him because he's supposed to be like a magical elf.
Mhm. Right.
I know that you addressed, what to do as far as training kids from a young age.
Mhm.
And I know, like, I did something very similar with the kids is that Santa never got them the best thing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
You know, for the kids who might be watching and if they're still here after all that lost stuff, hey, bless you.
Like,
But, you
yeah.
know, so yeah, I think that because I have that connection with Klaus, I was able to let him know, hey,
Like
this
salad
is what the
apples.
kids want,
Right.
but you go ahead and you get them this. I'm going to
Right.
get them this top thing.
Right.
So for kids who are already used to, that really, just bountiful and
Mhm.
that, shopping spree type Christmas, how do you
Mhm.
deal with that?
Yeah, so I think again it's a good opportunity. I think bottom line is like the kids might be upset and that's okay.
Wouldn't that
Like,
ruin
you
Christmas?
will, they will. Is this going to ruin life for them forever? No. Will it ruin Christmas for them forever? I hope not. Like one disappointing Christmas as being the thing. I think it is in how you react to it, and if you're able to say to them, um, like even sometimes things happen for Santa too, which is real. Like he's not immune from this pandemic in case any kids are watching.
Yes.
He's still impacted by that. Uh, magic is magic, but sometimes, we've seen all the movies and the cartoons. Sometimes Santa needs to be bailed out by somebody or
Mm-hmm.
needs a little bit of help. And if that helper is not there, maybe it does go awry. Like maybe we should see some more Christmas movies of where it doesn't go exactly according to plan because that's the reality of life. And so
Hallmark Channel.
I
But
think
wait, have you been watching the Santa Claus like get bailing Santa out?
I
That's a
I will neither confirm nor deny whether or not I've been watching various Christmas movies.
I'm just saying, and like I think that for the kids out there, acknowledge the fact that a lot of times if Santa doesn't bring exactly what's on the list because of a supply chain disruption, he leaves a nice note.
Right, right. He leaves a note. And again, ultimately, I would say for parents to keep in mind, like, this is not going to break your child. Like, this is not going to, this is not going to be the thing that sends them to therapy. Like, this is not, and if it is, I mean, it's not going to be the thing. And so, it's okay to be disappointed. Like the goal of parenting is not to raise kids that are never disappointed in Christmas or the holidays or their birthdays or things like that. It's to teach happy, to raise. I'm not even going to say 100% happy because again, that's not realistic either. The
Mm-hmm.
goal is to raise people who know how to enjoy life amidst the various circumstances that they're going through, understanding that like negative circumstances are not going to last forever. They're really not. They may suck and last for should I say that? They might be really
We'll edit it for the replay.
they might be really difficult and feel like it's lasting for a while, like a pandemic. But we
Mm-hmm.
really will get to the end of these negative things, and they don't last forever. And so it's okay for a child to be disappointed. Sometimes the more energy that we give that disappointment, sometimes there is such a thing as too much validation. And so sometimes it validating is saying like, yes, your experience, what you are experiencing is okay based on what you're experiencing it. But then let's talk about like how long do we stay in that? Like how do you then react and behave as a result? Is it okay to like throw a tantrum, tear up the Christmas tree, do whatever and whatnot? I don't even know. I'm just making stuff up here. No, absolutely not. But is it okay to feel a little bit disappointed? Sure, like that's understandable. And so, as parents, I think it's important, parents and caregivers, to understand that it's okay for kids to be disappointed in their Christmas present. And that's an opportunity to talk about feelings, and talk about, the realities of situations, and, really reinforce again. And I think this is a very valid moment then to put emphasis elsewhere than on gifts, for Christmas, so that you're not as subjected to, you know, how the child does or doesn't feel about a present that they get, you know.
No, I think that's a good take. So, Cindy, thank you very much for chatting with me about this. I know that I've learned a couple things. I hope I've taught you and the community a few things as well. And I look forward to our next chat. We should do this more often.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Enjoy your day. All right. See ya. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed the conversation with Cindy. And while we're still on the topic of, the holiday season and, just managing expectations and having it be less stressful, I know that one thing that people mention is that they noticed that as far as the tiny bookstore is concerned, our holiday cutoffs were significantly earlier this year than they've been in past years. Like if you're getting something by media mail, that deadline has passed. We've got one deadline coming up on the 8th, another one coming around, I believe, the 10th. And I know that for me, I remembered what I went through last year as far as the holiday season, where I was pulling all nighters, which I did not see myself pulling all nighters at this particular stage in my life. And just having to try to rush and call, the US Postal Service and, calling distributors and publishers, it just wasn't worth it. And I know some people said, like, you're going to lose sales. And as far as how I feel, what I see is that I'm going to lose those sales for that peace of mind, and I encourage everyone to do the same thing. At the end of the day, it's just books, like I think that mental health, physical well-being, and spending time with my family so that I'm present and not, working on other people's presents was what the priority would be. So, I know that there are other options out there. I know that, just in Pittsburgh, we are Littsburgh for a reason. Shout out to Littsburgh. But there are a lot of bookstores out there, and I know that I would not have any issues at all if you're looking for a particular book and we can't get that in, hey, if that's what's going to make someone's Christmas magical, White Whale is there, Riverstone right there, Penguins there, Mystery Lovers, Sparks, lots and lots of bookstores. I want you all to come back at some point. But no, like as far as the holiday season, expand your options. Gift cards are a thing. Getting a different book or something else to make that fit, that's what I'm going to encourage. And so, yes, I know that I'm going to be losing sales by doing the cutoff as early as I can, but I'm not going to get the time with my family back. So, hey, I'm okay with it. And if you are someone out there who feels like you need to hear permission to do the same thing, hey, I'm telling you, hey, you've got permission to put your happiness over profit every once in a while. And, that being said, we do have gift cards. So, next up, what we are going to do is cover some of our favorite kids books for 2021. And for me, there are a lot of books that I love, a lot of books that I don't, but there are some that really stand out every year. So what I wanted to do is just to kind of wrap up the year and give y'all some, holiday ideas, but also some holiday reading ideas, is to show the top 10. Well, you know what? I'm not going to say that. These are 10 kids books that really stood out for me this year. Are there more? Absolutely. Do I want to overwhelm them all? Absolutely not. So here are 10 of my favorite holiday books from 2021. So first we have Stunt Boy. In the Meantime by Jason Reynolds and drawings by Raoul III. This just came out and it is a delightful graphic. No, I'd call it a graphic novel. I think that's a fair description, but it's basically about a boy who is using his he's basically using some powers to help overcome some family difficulties that he's going through and observing. But it's a very, I'm not going to say poignant, but it's a book that has meaning and it's not superficial. And, Jason Reynolds is a national treasure. So definitely go out and get Stunt Boy in the meantime. Next up, Shuri the Vanished, and that is by Nick Stone. I don't know if y'all are new to the Tiny Bookstore community. We know that Nick Stone is one of my favorites. I also love, Marvel, so this is another great one. It is I would say that this is more towards older middle grades and up, but again, that's Shuri the Vanished by Nick Stone. Now, what we have up next is part of the Wait What series, Muhammad Ali Was a Chicken by Dan Gutman. Now, even though I just have the Muhammad Ali book up here, right now there are three books out. One is about Albert Einstein, the other is about Amelia Earhart. It is a hilarious collection of books where it teaches kids history, nonfiction, but does it in a very amusing fashion. And there's actually a new one on Theodore Roosevelt that's coming out in the spring. So I definitely think that y'all should look forward to that. Next up, we have African Icons by Tracy Baptiste. That's available in, like just the printed format. The audiobook is also excellent as well. It shows us the history of some great African figures. And I think that in order to have a nice broad understanding of world history, this book is a great and it's an interesting start. It's very well written. It's not a dry nonfiction book for kids. Next up, we have I Wish I Had a Wookiee and Other Poems for Our Galaxy. That really explains itself, doesn't it? I love Star Wars. I'm raising the little one to be a Star Wars fan as well. I love these cute little poem. I love this cute poem collection. So, be sure to grab that. Next up, we have Super Dweeb and the Pencil of Destiny. Two Super Dweeb books actually came out at the same time. I encourage this. It's another graphic novel, great for younger middle grades to just, I'd say that the top limit's probably going to be around 10 or 11 years old. But if you like Captain Underpants, then I think you'll appreciate Super Dweeb and the Pencil of Destiny. Now, we also have unfortunately the last book in the Tristan Strong trilogy. It's Tristan Strong Keeps Punching by Kwame Mbalia. And again, it's the last in the collection. It brings out kind of like a folk history for those who are not quite acquainted with this particular book series. But again, it's the last book that came out earlier this year. Next up, we have When Pigs Fly by Rob Harrell. And I love things that kind of take a little bit of I'm not saying that's taking a shot, but it's an amusing take on, superhero culture with this, superhero pig. So again, When Pigs Fly, When Pigs Fly by Rob Harrell. Now, the next one up, I'm going to give you a heads up that it did not come out in 2021. It actually came out in 2020. It's called It's Not Little Red Riding Hood by Josh Funk. Now, over at the Tiny Bookstore, we are a big fan of Josh Funk. He has a few different series that take different approaches to different genres. As far as It's Little Red Riding Hood, it's a different take on the fairy tales. There's one that he has that's on Jack and the Beanstalk. So I think that you should look into this particular series. And while you're at it, you can also look into the book series that he has that takes a refreshing and picture book look at science. And one of those is called, How to Code a Roller Coaster and How to Code a Sandcastle. So again, that's Josh Funk. This particular book, It's Not Little Red Riding Hood. Last and certainly not least is the Middle School Bites series. This one is the third in the series. It's out for blood. Since it's the third, of course, two others came out last year and the year before. It's by Stephen Banks, who, those of you who are seriously into SpongeBob SquarePants, you might remember him from, writing for that particular TV institution. But Middle School Bites is the story of Van Wolfzom. It's a person right before his first day of middle school. Tom is unfortunately bitten by a vampire and a zombie and a werewolf. And in each story, we see how he adjusts to his new life as a Van Wolfzom and adjusts to life as a middle schooler while also dealing with, the vampire and werewolf that brought him into, their group. And that's all we have today for the Tiny Bookstore Live. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions about anything that we discussed today, feel free to contact us on our social media. We're at TinyBooksPGH. Also, hey, send us a text message. And, specifically if you have questions about, any of the cases that I mentioned at the top of the hour, Roe versus Wade, again, text, send a message, and also pick up The Authority of the Court and the Peril of Politics by Stephen Breyer. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I will see you next time on Tiny Bookstore Live.